joining us today. Really looking forward to having a solid discussion.
Over to you. I'm going to mute myself. Let me know when you want to play around with the slides. And as the questions come in, if I find a question appropriate, I'll jump in for a little bit.
Sure. Okay. We at the beginning, we're going to be talking about the art of storytelling, how to display instances of leadership, your achievements and your failures. And there are a few general guidelines around the same. Is that the essays, which usually range from 2 to 4, that touch upon these broad topics, they're not meant to be a statement of records. For that, they already have your resume and can see the core numeric side of it. The idea is to actually bring about the whole context about how you went about achieving a certain thing, or even or failing at a certain thing. What I have seen that's very useful is when candidates want to think about their leadership journey or their achievement, is to adopt a STAR approach, in the sense that you think about a situation. What exactly was the situation, and what are the factors and events that led you to it? Then the task aspect, wherein you set about how did you come about setting the required tasks needed for you to achieve your goal. Action is what are the actionables you acted upon. How did you get other team members to act upon the same actionables? How did you bring about collaboration in decision making and actions? And then the final bit is about results, which is where you really shine, which is where you not only just mention about the quantitative aspect of what you were able to achieve or what you were not able to achieve, but why that particular number or why that particular result is significant, both from an organizational perspective and also from a personal perspective. One more point that I want to emphasize is on failure. The idea is a lot of us are very cagey about our failure instances, and rightfully so. But I think it's a way to bring about the human side in your application, because otherwise all of us would look like these rock stars who don't need an MBA and and are ready to be CEOs from day one. I personally feel failure essays are actually very good way to make yourself stand outside an application. And just rounding about the whole storytelling aspect quickly is about when we think about leadership and when we think about achievements, we always tend to force ourselves into thinking, oh, it has to be something solid or impressive that everybody has to get it. It's a very personal. Both these aspects are very personal. Actually, all three aspects are very personal, and essays are a great tool to utilize a particular situation, however small or big it might seem to you from your resume. But providing a good context in the essays can actually help you, put a great context and great light on your achievements. So don't shy away from using an achievement only because it doesn't sound impressive from a numerical perspective. Next slide, Bharati, please. Then moving on to optional essays, I think particularly in my particular case, optional essays were I needed to address optional essays both at ISB and at INSEAD, because of the fact that I initially had low GPA, low GMAT, and the other time around I was a reapplicant. The idea about optional essays is to actually what my approach was to actually be to hit the nail on the head. Everybody knows what are the obvious gaps in their application. It could be low GMAT, it could be a gap year. And it's very evident. There's no point, using your optional essay to, go round and round in circles. So make it very succinct, hit the point, when it comes to optional essays, address the issue at the onset, and, don't use more than 300 essays, 300 words for it. And the only way to, to craft an effective optional essays is to neutralize your weakness with a strength. So if you happen to have a low GMAT, maybe you can supplement it with high undergrad or postgraduate grades. Even if that's not working out, I'd strongly urge candidates to actually go for alternative courses on Coursera and other websites, where you can actually show that you're capable of withstanding the rigor of the academic program. Gap year is actually very interesting. Both at INSEAD and at ISB, I encountered several people who had gap years, and in their own words, that was not a problem because they addressed it very effectively. Life happens. It's not always that you'll be working throughout. There could be gaps. It's important to address why you took the gap and what did you do in that period, and how does that contribute to you as an applicant, and how would that benefit or strengthen you. Then the reapplication is simply around, a lot of times people apply to the same school in 2 different cycles across academic years. The idea would be to actually highlight what all changes you brought about in your job, in your circumstances with regards to your GMAT, with regards to your job, or any personal achievements in this 1 year, so that it's worthwhile for them to actually consider an application. And for second MBA, the idea is about how would undertaking essentially the same course really help you in this. In my case, I effectively utilized the fact that I was looking more for the network part, network that the MBA from INSEAD had afforded me, rather than the academic portion. And it worked fine for me. So in a sense, what you have, optional essays, don't fret about it. Be succinct, hit the issue on the head, and just bring something positive for every negative you have in your application. That's it. Next slide, please. I think this portion is where Timotej sets in.
Perfect. Thank you, Devanshi. So great to be here. And the couple of things that we're going to discuss today. One is now why MBA. It's a very critical essay. And then also in the next slide, I'll be discussing about the fit. So these two sort of things are very interlinked, and I'll make some references. But once we go through both of these slides, I think it will all kind of round up to a nice story. And the way I've decided to kind of discuss this today is around what to focus on and what to avoid, because I think that's there are some easy tips that can help avoid some of the common pitfalls, and then also help your thinking as you're preparing for your applications in the first section. So when you think about why MBA, I want to distinguish that question from questions around goals. So this is not just a future-looking question. This is actually a sort of past, present, and future question. So the first thing that you have to think about is your past, actually, your career to date. And here, what MBAs or MBA admissions are always looking for is what can you contribute to the class. This is hugely important because you end up learning a lot from your classmates during your MBA. There's many projects that you work together on. People come in with different skills, expertise, and you end up learning a lot from your classmates. So that's the approach that you have to take in this question as well. What is it that I can contribute? What have I done in my career to date that contributes to the class? The second one is the skill gap. So what are the gaps? What skills have you gained to date in your career, and what are the gaps that you're looking to fill with the MBA? And here's the piece where I want to kind of focus on being very specific. So as you'll see in the what to avoid, don't try to hit all the skills that MBA schools provide. So being generic means I want to learn strategy, I want to learn operations, I want to learn finance, I want to learn marketing, right? That's the core MBA. Every single MBA school will provide that. You don't want to be generic, you want to be specific. So some examples here, I'll take it from my career. I started in finance, so I had a solid background in finance. What are my skills that I was looking to fulfill? Well, clearly, things around strategy and operations. So that's where the core Berkeley Haas curriculum had really strong strengths in. But for me, actually, the bigger side of the skills gap was on the technical side, because I was looking for a career switch, and hence I went for a school that provided a very strong rounding in energy. So when you think about skills, there's sort of two types of skills that you can think about. One is the sort of fundamental business skills. The second one is industry related, and that's where the broader university that you can tap into helps. And I'll emphasize a lot today homework. So basically, it's very important to do your homework about that particular school, and what is it about that MBA that is different from their competition, because universities are competing against each other, and it's very important for them to know that if you are selected, you're going to accept that offer. You're not going to go to a competitive school. So that's where we'll talk about it a little bit more in the next slide, actually, as we're discussing the fit. And now the very important piece, no, we're still on the previous slide, is around consistency. So there's sort of again two types of consistency that I wanted to discuss. And the first one is a bit more obvious. So how does your current career map to your long and short-term goals? And this is where I gave one example of something to avoid, which is I worked in finance. I'm looking for a marketing position post-MBA. That is not impossible, but it is difficult, and you have to be really convincing as to why you're doing that. It has to be a perfect fit with the school, and you have to demonstrate reasons for that. Instead, what we can think about is, okay, coming back from finance, I can actually apply that knowledge to my new career. So in this case, when I was working through my MBA, I actually decided to go for an analytical position in energy as my post-MBA job, because it had a natural progression from analytical position I had in finance. So that consistency around your skill set, this basically will show the admissions that you have taught through, and that you will actually be able to land a job. Landing a job is another very key component to MBA admissions and to essentially rankings. So schools that have high job acceptance by first MBA, so post MBA jobs, that gives those schools high rankings as well. So very important to demonstrate that in your why MBA essay, that you have maturity and that you know exactly what you're looking for after the MBA as well. So these two things kind of play hand in hand, and again we'll discuss this a little bit later in the next fit. So we can move on to the next slide. So strong fit, and what I really want to emphasize here is the homework piece. It's actually not so difficult to do the homework, especially today where there's so many online resources, and it's very important to be very time effective. We're all very busy. You're doing a full-time job, demonstrating leadership at that full-time job, and on the side you have to prepare your applications, do the GMAT. So time is very critical. There's sort of you have two most important resources when you're an applicant. One is time. The second one is words. So you have to use both very, very carefully. And the secondary research can really help you save a lot of time in the future. So a couple of things to keep in mind. First is the entering class. So you're looking at the entering class of the university. Does my profile fit well with that class? Yes, if the answer is yes, great. Then I should apply to that school. In some cases, again, you can be an exception, but then everything else has to be in line as well. And the second piece is the alumni profile. So how does it fit with my career goals? So just to give some examples here, again, sort of the finance versus marketing example, I think that's always easy. If you're looking to get into finance, you're applying to schools that are known for their finance programs. So like some of the top ones like Wharton, Chicago, etc. You may apply to something like Kellogg, but Kellogg is known to be a marketing school. So then you have to really explain why are you picking that school if your goal post MBA is finance. And why is that alumni profile so important as well? The alumni network is going to help you nail your internship during the summer, and the alumni network is going to help you nail your first job after the MBA. So during your MBA, you're going to be networking with alumni as well to sort of work through getting that job. So now at this time, while you're thinking through your MBA, by examining the profile, you can really see if it aligns to your goals. And at this point, you want to have that consistent short list. So pick, I think, a good sort of approach that I've seen at MBA and beyond is sort of 3+3+3. So 3 schools, 3 target schools, and 3 safety schools. But they should be consistent, right? If you're going into finance, your safety school should still be good in finance. It shouldn't be like a marketing strong school. because then you're not showing consistency in your approach in your work, and that may reflect at the end of the day in the essay. You have to remember that MBA admissions are looking at a lot of details. Every sentence counts, and being consistent and having that mindset from the start helps a lot. Now, the second piece of the research is primary research. So the secondary research, you can do that online, just going through, the websites, etc. Primary research is actually talking to alumni and attending events. And so here, being prepared is key. Again, it saves you a lot of time. So for instance, when you're talking to alumni, you want to be prepared with questions for them. What are specific things about maybe classes, the career, etc., etc. Have a good list of questions before that conversation. And then what you really want to get out of the conversations with alumni or current students as well is the nuance. So the fine details that you may not notice on the website that sort of explain the culture, the philosophy, the key values of that school. Because then you want to apply that fine detail into your essays and show that you've done your homework. And then the events, I think they're a great way to understand the context, right? The context of the school, what are the strengths, maybe some of the explanations to the most recent data to complement your secondary research. So both of those things definitely a must as you're preparing. And then again, what should we avoid? I go back to the same thing, which is generic answers. No one likes to hear generic answers. So one thing I always try to tell people to avoid is don't tell the school what they already know. So telling them, hey, there is this famous professor at your school and I want to take their class. They already know that there's that famous professor and that class is renowned. But you have to be specific in that. Why are you specifically looking to take that class? Is there something maybe in the previous years of research of that professor that fits with your current career or with your future plans? So even in this case, when you're demonstrating the fit, it really needs to align with either your post-MBA goals or pre-MBA career, as opposed to just being generic and you have leadership in X, Y, and Z. And another thing to avoid are laundry lists. Listing 5 courses in the core that you want to take during that MBA program. It tells the school that you know about them, but it doesn't tell them anything about you. So remember, even when you're addressing things that are specific to a particular school and a university, that still needs to be sort of reflecting on how it will impact your life, your career, and your goals. And essentially, being specific and being able to link is what you need to do. If you're thinking about writing something like about a professor or a course, and you can't link that to your career, then you probably are best to sort of scratch that and start from the beginning. And you may pick a professor that may not be as renowned or a class that may not be as popular, but if it really fits with your career, then the admissions will recognize that you really want to go into that school, and that's your top choice. Because even with safety schools, you still want to show the admissions that that school is your top choice, and that's why you have to always demonstrate the strong fit as you're applying to MBAs. So we can move on to the next slide. So now to discuss something that's a little bit more, I would call it operational and tactical, which is resumes. So the first thing I want to address here is that most schools, not to say every school, has its own template. So that's the first low-hanging fruit. Always apply to the school using the template from that school. It's an easy way not to lose any points, and this is also very important for folks that come into an MBA application without a prior business experience. So say engineering or software or stuff like that, where you have a different template altogether and a way to think about resumes. MBA resumes have a very, very specific approach, and you have to sort of adjust to that as you're working on your resume. So besides the school specific, my next bullet point is about quantify, and I actually wrote it 3 times because you really have to remember it. I noticed a lot of candidates forget that, which is quantify an impact that you made, whether that is a percentage or a dollar amount or number of people that you impacted. It's very, very important to quantify. MBA is as a course is always quant specific. So And especially, one thing I remember actually when I was, started at Haas, and I was working with the, career office on planning for my, post-MBA job. There's been quite a few, adjustments to my resume compared to the one that I submitted during my application, because I didn't quantify certain things enough. And the way I also like to kind of advise folks is to think about the way that you write down a bullet point, starting with an impact. So just an example, maybe saved my company X dollars by doing X, Y, and Z. People tend to say, I led a team, or I did this and that made an impact to the company. Switch it to the other way around. The impact comes first, and then what you did to achieve it. And then the final bullet point here is about demonstrating leadership. That's something that you can never do enough while you're doing your applications, and it needs to be reflected in your resume as well. And when you think about your resume, it's where the words really count the most, where it's the most scarce resource that you have, because you have to put everything in one page. So that's quite a few words, only the most essential ones. So being able to quantify plus demonstrate leadership, show impact, I think that's going to make a huge difference on your resume. All right, we can move on to the next slide. And I believe Devansh is going to talk a little bit about letter of recommendations and other things.
Yes. Okay. So we've just put together an entire LOR together on a slide, so nothing's visible. But
oh, wow.
but that was
sure.
But that was never the point, right? It's not a copy and paste job, anyways. Essentially, letter of recommendations are, as the name suggests, is given by probably your immediate reporting manager or leader of the organization, to actually confirm the assertions that you're making in your applications. That, hey, I'm a good leader, or hey, I'm very analytical in my job, and this is what I've done at this particular firm. A recommender's job, or a recommendation essay's job, is to actually confirm the same, and actually provide an alternative view of what you think you did well and what you think you didn't do well. So the idea of how to go about writing a letter of recommendation is essentially giving snippets of what you've done at a particular organization to the recommender, and then giving him time to think about it and help him remember what you've done, help him put him into words. The idea is it's a very thin line in which you're sort of actually asking somebody to recommend you versus you're actually telling somebody what to write on their LOR. I would highly suggest not to do the latter, because what it does is that your LORs just become a copy paste of your essays, and it's very visible to the adcoms who've been seeing application after applications, on a daily basis. The third thing about going through the LOR journey is first choosing who your LOR who's going to be a recommender. And in this case, there's a tendency for people to actually pick people with fancy titles, CEOs, CXOs, people who know whose position matters more. But I would not. But if you've not directly worked with somebody with that title, I would highly suggest not to do it, because there has to be the adcom has to see that the person who's recommending you has has had the fortune of working with you on a daily basis. So even a manager, the title doesn't matter that much. So if a manager has had the opportunity to look at your work on a daily basis, has had an opportunity to influence you, mentor you, he is a much better person to give you an LOR than somebody who's 10 positions up in the organization and whose name sounds fancy. The second thing is about how to set up or prime up your recommenders. My suggestion would be to actually get started on your LOR almost simultaneously along with your essays, because coming up with pointers for your recommender and then giving them the time and then them having the time to fill in the LOR for you, it will take significant time. and you don't want to do a very botched hush and rush job towards the very end. I've never seen that end up very well. And lastly, please avoid copy pasting stuff from your essays and your resumes into directly into your LOR, so that there is nothing new for the AdCom to read. At MBA and Paridhi can expand a bit further upon how we go about that at MBA and beyond. But these are the general guidelines you want to have in mind when you're starting to put together your LOR toolkit for your recommenders.
Great. Thanks, Devanshu and Timo. We've got actually a question. So there's, let me just pull out the question. So there's a little question, and you guys are welcome to ask as many questions as you want. So Fatika wants to know, I'm currently working in an edtech startup, and my long-term goal is to build a non-profit edtech company. Mm-hmm. Can it be considered as consistent?
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly the transition that you're looking to make with your MBA, right? Staying in the same industry, and I think MBA's admissions do love entrepreneurs. The only thing that, as an entrepreneur myself, it's not the easiest first post-MBA job to land, in a sense of salary and expectations. So maybe having a sort of a game plan as to how you're planning to go about it. I think that's something that you may want to convince the admissions committee on.
Yes, and just to add a bit more to that, it's good that you want to pursue career in the same industry, but then your application should have a lot of focus on how would MBA fit the puzzle. Because you already have an edtech background, why don't you just start a nonprofit right away? What are the few critical elements that are missing from your toolkit right now that can be fulfilled by a global MBA that will help you A, launch it better, and B, take it to greater heights than you would be able to do it otherwise.
Absolutely. So I'd say the key would be to identify the key gaps in your profile that only an MBA can help you bridge.
And maybe just to add one last thing around this, which is around the fit as well, right? There are certain schools and universities that are known for their social impact programs, where alumni actually go into social impact jobs and nonprofits. So that's also something to really look into. And I would definitely, in this case, advise you to reach out to some of those alums that did something like this, because again, it's going to be a very challenging career onwards. So you want to do a lot of preparation for that.
Absolutely. So I'm going to take a little break and share a little funny thing with you guys. There is a little video. I don't know how many of you seen the video where Wharton students have put a video together of putting an IKEA bed together, and they are making fun of all the schools. But what you get out of that little video, I'm going to share it in a bit. Have you guys seen it, Timotej and Devanshu?
I've seen it.
No, I'm not.
I've seen it.
I shouldn't recommend that video in a coffee session, but just I think it gives you a great idea of what.
It's actually MBA in a nutshell for you.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just gonna stop sharing and reshare my screen. I'm pulling off that video on YouTube so that all of us can maybe later on, and I'll drop the link in the chat box here. It's called Wharton Mom IKEA bed, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that was the one. I'll just search with the, I'm going to share it in a bit.
Just shifting my chair. Sorry.
No problem.
Now, there's a whole channel called Wharton Follies. So basically they make fun of the MBA experience. It's funny and in some ways true as well.
Yeah, so okay, I'll just play it for a bit and then I'll drop in the link here so you guys can watch it.
Now, Wharton MBA is a symbol of home bed from IKEA. 20 years of school, 2 degrees, 5 years of work experience. I was literally born to build IKEA furniture.
Okay, well, hold on. Let's come up with a plan first.
Yeah, I got some really exciting ideas to optimize this process. We could specialize our roles. We could merge with other bed makers. We could outsource to Mexico. We could refinance. We could LBO.
We could down, Spaz.
This is essentially the same thing as our Gillette case. We just need to make sure we stick to our core competencies and that our COGS are less than our WTP. Let's model.
Guys, I've got it.
If we pay out early investors with contributions from later investors, we'll essentially just make infinite profit.
Like a Ponzi scheme.
Whoa. More like a pyramid strategy.
The numbers don't lie, Chaz. You're the bottleneck.
I'm not the bottleneck. You're the fucking bottleneck.
Maybe if you knew how to crank a fucking Allen wrench, you wouldn't be.
Yeah, I guess they didn't teach shop in Deerfield. It's fucking Phillips Academy.
I'm sorry about that, guys.
I
But
think we're done.
Oh, hells yeah. 27% cost savings, 30 million in increased revenue, 25% ROI. Fucking crush this bit assembly.
Wait, guys, what about company culture?
Shut up, Steve.
okay, got it. So I'm going to drop the link here. The idea is that at the end of the video, you guys will be able to tell what school is good for what. And how they do it with Kellogg is like very interesting. So I absolutely love how they put it together, conveying that what each school is known for. Like Kellogg is for marketing. So they very clearly, so you'll be able to relate to which schools you really like and which school is really known for what in a very, like that Devanshu said, in nutshell. So I'm going to drop the link here. Okay, Ananya has a question before we jump onto the process. A bunch of questions. So Sonia is asking, how do we show business income to adcoms? I'm not really sure if I get that question. Do you want to elaborate, Sonia, and maybe we can, like you can try to unmute yourself? Okay, I'm not sure if she's there or if I can try to unmute her. Let me see. Okay. Then the next question is how to tackle the intermediary role stage en route to entrepreneurship. Okay, well, so I think Sonia is unmuted. Do you want to go ahead with your question, Sonia?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity. So basically, I wanted to ask that I have an app which is Google AdSense powered. So the amount of income which I'm generating from there is currently in my bank account, like personal bank account. It's not a business bank account. So I want to know, like, we'll sure everyone is going to have a verification process of these claims we are going to put in our application. So I wanted to ask, like, how do we show that income, like it's a genuine thing?
So just taking a dig here, Sonia, you have other you have a full-time job alongside this app, or this is
Yes.
right? Okay, so great.
It's a side hustle.
It's a side hustle, great, right? And you would get some statement of, you know, this month you received this much income, right?
Yeah.
Which account it really falls into is not Adcom's concern. And I'd like to just, you know, bring a bigger point here. Because resume inflation is a real thing. You know, we do stuff worth X and write 10X, and you know, sometimes it's okay. And I'm not saying that you've done it, but you know, it's just generally the case, right? So there's a certain sense that, you know, hey, what if they ask me for the proof of it? The idea, so the best way to go about it is to not, you know, don't lie too much, right? Don't make it unbelievable. Second is, second is, you know, you don't have every adcom treats you with an intention to believe what you've said rather than doubt what you've said, right? So long as you're not lying, the mechanics of how you got the income or how that app is set up, do you have a partnership, how much time you're spending on it, they're still fluid and that can be understood in the context that you give them. So I would not worry too much about it. The fact that it falls in your personal bank account, I don't think, unless adcom got Deloitte to do forensic accounting on you, you know, they won't be able to get it, as long as it's true, right? So don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's like, so I can provide them a personal bank account statements if needed. That's fine, right?
That'll be fine. Don't worry. I just like, but sorry, just jumping in between. You know, Tanvi has a question that's you know, that's very similar. So
go on.
Thank you, Devanshu.
No worries, Sonia. Thank you. So the second question is that's added to this is, do adcoms ask for incomes? If yes, then why? Yes, adcoms do ask how much you're making. It's for two things. First is to assess what is your employment capability post-graduation from an MBA. right? Second is to verify whether the claims that you're making. So for example, you worked at an XYZ company. So if you really worked, you must have made some money. It doesn't have to be big or small, right? So that's why they are. That's why they ask for incomes. And the third reason why they do is to gauge an idea of this amount of scholarship they have to grant you. And it's a double-edged sword, because if you were to show very high income, which makes the AdCom feel really happy about having you on board, but at the same time, you would have to compromise a bit on scholarship unless you have competing offers from other schools. So yes, AdComs do ask for income. It's a proof of what your work, and it's done to get an idea of the kind of scholarship that you might be entitled to.
And maybe just to add one more thing to that, some schools would also show the change in salary pre and post MBA.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So this is where actually some of the international students have an upper hand, coming off from developing countries where you have low income to begin with compared to US salaries, and then you get a post MBA job with a significantly higher MBA. That's a really good thing for the MBA rankings. So even if you're considering your salary as something on an international level that's not very high, it's actually not a bad thing for the admissions. And one thing I wanted to maybe just add a quick point to the previous question around, sort of like a side gig. The optional essay is actually an area where you can explain some of these things. That if you have space for it, where you can essentially explain that you have a side gig, and that it comes to your personal bank account, et cetera. So you can use your words effectively, and that can save the admission a lot of time on actually trying to figure out and proof of the your income on the side.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, both of you. So I think we've got a bunch of questions flowing in. So that we can tackle all the questions, I'll quickly walk you guys through our process. It'll just take 5 minutes, just so you know if you're looking to work with MBA and beyond, how it's going to look like. And then we're going to go back to answering all your questions. We still have time. Just before I jump onto questions again, the process again, these are the 2 questions that we are expecting you to answer, to reach out to us by tomorrow. Spend the whole of Sunday and half of Saturday, whatever you want to do. Which 3 schools and rounds are you applying to, and why? Think about Timotej's approach, where he talked, how should you think about schools? What are your post-MBA aspirations? Why do you really need an MBA? What have you researched into the profiles of people who've gone to the schools that you're aspiring to get into? Have you spoken to the alums? If you've not done that kind of research, it's still okay. We want to understand what's your preliminary thought process. Most likely, some of you are looking at either Jan 24 intake or September 24 intake. And right now is the time when you should really start thinking about what your aspirations with the business school are, even while working on your GMAT or your GRE alongside. Just a little stat, candidates who started working with us in the January or somewhere around December last year, and they were targeting Jan 24 or early action rounds, we have more than 97% success rate with candidates who start at least 7 to 8 months prior to the deadlines, especially when you're going for like more than 7 schools. So you really want to discount at least 25 days per application on an average. So that's a good approach if you really want to write kick-ass application. Then the second question is going to be, what do you think is your biggest achievement? You can think about STAR approach, the one that Devanshu spoke about. We're also going to be sharing the recording of this meeting with you, of this webinar. So you can always go back to the slides and of course, refine your thought process and then send in your answers. All right, moving back to our process. If you're coming on board, so MBA and Beyond is one of the consulting firms that does not believe in the idea that you need to know schools when you start the pre-work of your business schools. It's okay, absolutely okay if you don't know what schools you're going to go for. We're going to get you started with something that's called content gathering phase. This is going to be you brainstorming, brain dumping about your life's journey, about your professional journey, with the help of the frameworks that have been defined by alums, admission directors, and adcoms of top business schools. So these guys have put together frameworks which help you churn out the best possible stories that are from your personal and professional journey both. You're going to go through several rounds of improvements here. This journey you take with content gathering specialist, who's also a therapy practitioner, gives you a very neutral and a very healthy space to think as honestly as possible with respect to the business schools. Once you've done the content gathering, that's when you sit down with your consultant, brainstorm and identify what are the post-MBA goals that you're really aspiring to get out of an MBA, because an MBA is not your end goal. MBA is your means to your goal. Your post-MBA goal is your goal, and MBA is going to be fitting in somewhere in between in your life's journey. So you're going to have that discussion, and your consultant, who's most likely taken a very similar journey like what you are planning to take, or somebody who has had massive number of years of experience and has great success rate. Now, we bring together a pool of consultants who are sitting as startup founders in the Silicon Valley. Some of there are consultants like Devanshu is working with McKinsey. Some of them are working with Bain, London. Some of them are working with Bain, New York, Chicago. Some of them are in BCG. Some of them are admissions directors of top business schools. Some of them are just running their own startups. Some of them are in private equity and VC firms. Some of them are big investment bankers. So these are the guys who are bringing together the knowledge, map you with your post-MBA aspirations, and then you guys are going to work together in identifying what's the best approach to go to the best schools possible where you're really trying to land. For example, if you're looking at clean energy, you might as well just be matched with Timotesh. If you're looking to become a management consultant, you might as well be matched with Devanshu, because he's done what you're trying to do and he can advise you best with that. Once the consultant mapping is done and you've done content gathering, you're going to brainstorm, identify the best fit school for yourself, and then you start working the real work on your essays, LORs, resume, interviews. In between this, there's something that's called branding we help you with. Branding is going to be a very unique document for you, which is going to help you identify your differentiator. It's going to have your unique selling point. It's going to have your strengths, weaknesses, everything in one page. This is your Bible. It's going to help you identify how you're going to repeatedly showcase your story in front of business schools. Your overall story really remains the same. The structure remains the same. Of course, you're going to fit it into the number of words that each question or each essay is going to ask you. These are the major aspects of what we help you with. But once you come on board, like if you sequentially want to understand how MBA and beyond works with you, so you're going to do a little welcome on board exercise, which is going to you answering questions around why MBA, your preliminary thought process around your aspirations or your goals, which can of course change later, since 90% of the candidates who we work with, they all want to become management consultants. I really want people to think more or beyond management consulting with an MBA, but that's the heart of the matter. Like that's the truth. That's what candidates want to do. So once you do the welcome on board, you're going to be mapped with a consultant. You get on a call with a consultant, then you start doing content gathering, and you do a few calls with your content gathering specialist. Once the content gathering has been done and you've been mapped with a consultant, you work on your branding. Your consultant is going to come up with a branding document for you. And once everybody's happy with your branding, you get on to deciding the schools. Your branding document is going to be the document which is going to help you decide your schools. And once the schools have been defined, then you start working on your essays, LORs, and interview preparation. Just a note, even though the hours are unlimited, but depending on the time that you have at hand, we will sometimes people who are looking for round 2, you can't have unlimited. You only have so many days. You barely have 50 days to your deadlines. So we'll have to split that across depending on how many schools you're really targeting. All right, let's move on to the questions again. So we've got a question by Ananya. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And again, you're going to receive an email from us. If you're interested, you can send us the answers. So Ananya is asking, hey everyone, I'm currently a management consultant at Accenture, and my long-term goal would be to reach impact investing, where I would be able to utilize my consulting background and business school skills. Would you say that it would stand out as a red flag? Devanshu, Timotesh, do you want to take that one up? Anyone?
Devanshu, do you maybe want to take it as a consultant, and I can jump in afterwards?
I was also thinking so. Go for it.
Okay, so just a while, I'm just wrapping my head around. Just hold on, please. Just hold on.
Sure.
maybe I can throw a couple of, quick thoughts while Devansh is preparing. So yes and no, right? The red flag itself, it's more how you write your application than in this scenario, because as a management consultant, you have a pretty broad set of skills and you can pretty much take on any job. And then the impact in investing, it's a very specific, very, very specific, industry. So in that regard, you really need to be very clear on your journey. And the MBA obviously will help. I think picking the right school here is super important, because you do want to talk to quite a few alums that are in that space during your MBA, so that you can land that job. So East Coast schools are great for that, but also some of the VCs in California and Silicon Valley could be a good fit. So those could be some of the schools to think about.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay. So
Everyone should go on.
yeah, apologies. I'm traveling. I'm in India for holidays, and there's too much noise. So shifted to a new room. I agree with what Timothy has said, and so what you're doing it doesn't matter. If you have the fact that you're a consultant is a very good plus point. And I think one of the reasons why people want to become consultant is for the wide variety of options that you can pursue, or you're thought of being capable of pursuing. The only point that I would just like to add is use the essays to effectively communicate what are the steps that you will take to reach the long-term goal, right? And what are the viable short-term goals, short-term career options that you can pursue, and why do you think a particular school XYZ helps you achieving those goals, both in the short and the long term? Hope that helps.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Hope that helps. This was by Ananya. All right. India is asking how to tackle, my understanding of this question is that she has a role en route to entrepreneurship. So she's asking how to tackle the intermediary role stage en route to entrepreneurship. I can ask her if she's still there to unmute herself to elaborate on the question, because that will really help. So India, I've given you the rights to unmute yourself. You can, if you want to.
Yeah, hello everybody. Hello Devanshu, hello Bharati. This is Rohit here. Sorry, I'm using a company account, and I'm a national athlete, part of the national rowing team, an Asian Games medalist.
Yeah, so, I was actually interested. I was like, this is such a great name.
I was like, shit, I stuck at Devanshu like an athlete myself. So pretty cool, 6,000 kilometers across. I can't imagine doing 60. It hurts a lot. Anywho, the question was actually, you somewhat answered it, Devanshu. It was regarding, if you have, say, I work in government, and I work in the government. I have a small not-for-profit that I do on the side, sports space. Mm-hmm. If I want to make my goal, say entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, is build a social business is what my long-term goal is. What kind of routes do I sort of pitch to a business school without seeming flaky, or without seeming like, I'm not grounded? So how really do I put it?
Okay, sure. Okay. So two things that come to my mind is one, when you're pursuing entrepreneurship, there is no reason for being grounded. You have to be crazy enough to leave everything and leave a job and do entrepreneurship. So no approach to entrepreneurship is flaky. And then the second thing is a bit more nuanced. See, you don't at some point of time you really have to think about the it's an interaction between two people who want to work together. You don't want to do stuff only to sound amazing or appealing to the B school. If you want to do social entrepreneurship going in future, right? By that I mean 2 or 3 years or something like that. You need to start working on it, even a bit by bit, even now. So what are those little steps that you're taking? It's the other way around. It's not like, hey, the B school would appreciate this, so hence let me do this so that I get an admission. It's actually totally opposite. If you want to do something, right? So okay, I'm going to pick an example out of my experience, right? When I wanted to do an agri startup, right? I wasn't thinking of MBA, but let's say I was in the same shoes. I want to do something with agriculture, and I've done a little bit of it. My first approach would be to learn a little bit about agriculture, even without the MBA being in question, right? And once somebody thinks about, okay, yes, I want to do an MBA because it helps me in certain ways, that is where I bring these points in that, hey, I want to do X, I wanted to do X. And out of the 10 things that are needed for me to do this, I have already done a couple, right? It sounds more believable. It is more believable, right? Like I can say I want to be an astronaut, but then, like if I'm not read a single book on physics, or if I've not gone through at least 1/10 the journey, it's just not believable. And at the end of it, I feel like this is like a general statement for everybody. Don't do stuff only because it lands you in a particular B school. It's the other way around. Do stuff that makes B school want to have you on their board. It's just the other way. When I went for my record, I had no intention of applying to SB. I had no intention of going to INSEAD. Everything that has happened, dots have connected in hindsight. It might seem like, oh, I did X, and that's why B school thought he's a good guy. No, I just did it because I wanted to do it, and then when B school happened, it was a useful point to bring about.
Yeah, and maybe a couple of things I want to add to this as well. So when I was applying to business schools, I never thought I was going to be an entrepreneur, and I guess living in Silicon Valley kind of just came by. I was omnipresent everywhere, and I actually had a natural intermediary step because I went from finance to clean energy, took 5 years in a utility, learned a lot about the industry, and then applied that to the startup. But what I want to advise you on is sort of, again, the mistakes that you can make versus the things that you have to demonstrate. And the easy mistake you can make in your application is to say, I want to be an entrepreneur. It doesn't tell the admission anything. It's not a calling. You have to be specific. You have to have an idea. You have to sort of, demonstrate if it's like an ag example that Devansh gave. What have you done in ag to date? Are you going to take an ag job in a corporate setting or in a larger company for a couple of years before going after that? There's a lot of steps between now and that entrepreneurial venture. And you have to have, as Devansh said, at least done a good chunk of the road. And quite frankly, it is a challenge for the admissions. So I would err on doing more of those steps now than less, because it's a clear red flag if they see, okay, this guy wants to be an entrepreneur. Is he going to land a job? Is he going to land income? Is that going to affect our rankings?
Yeah.
So I think the good intermediary step is to show a post-MBA job that's going to fit really well with that long-term entrepreneurial goal.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both of you. It was really good, Timotej. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So Utkarsh wants to know, this is Timotej more for resume. So he's asking, while writing a resume, when there is no specific layout provided by a B school, is it fine we put our work experience first and then academic qualifications? I have over 5 years of experience, and my current job and future goals have no overlap with my graduation degree.
Yeah, so that's a general approach to resume, right? You want to write the most latest and the most recent, and clearly when an application is coming, that's going to be your work experience. So you want to start with that. One advice I can also give you, if a B school doesn't have their own template, find a similar B school and take that template, refine it a little bit, and do that. Don't there's a lot of templates out there. Obviously, working with MBA and beyond, you'll get templates directly, but don't worry so much about a template. I think what I've heard here in the question are some other red flags that you may want to think about more, which is the actual content itself rather than the format.
All right, thanks. This is a question for you, Devanshu. Yachit is asking, I have a low GMAT of 690. I think he's starting in INSEAD, that's why. But have experience of working on my own startup that didn't take off as expected. Do you think I can make a compelling story out of this for the optional essay?
Okay. So, again, like this is a broader point that I'm seeing in, questions that are flowing in. People are actually mentioning about, a failed startup or having worked in the same industry, for a longer period of time. see, the broader question that everybody has to keep in mind when applying is that it's an interaction between for the lack of a better word, a buyer and a seller. You are a buyer of education and they are a seller of education, right? So you don't have to be scared to go to the seller, right? You just have to go to the right seller. Please keep that in mind. So, a general advice for everybody who's attending this, I'm sure, it all sounds very intimidating. It all sounds very, overwhelming that how will I fare against, thousands of applications? It absolutely doesn't matter. You are your unique profile, and all you need in the end is one admission seat, and they have at least 500 NEB school. Now, being specific with the question that's being asked is, your startup not having worked is not a big deal. Statistically, startups don't work. That's why they're risky and stuff like that. However, tackling why your startup didn't work in optional essay is not a great strategy. That story probably belongs in other main essays. Where there's more context involved, right? Optional essays are supposed to be, in my opinion, a very bullet point summary of what has gone wrong and what have you done to undo it to some extent. So low GMAT per se would belong in the second category, and that would go in the optional essays. But please tackle questions regarding a startup, its failure, and what and what have you learned out of it in the main essays.
All right. Thanks a lot, Devanshu. That was very valuable. Thanks, both of you, and thanks everyone for joining in today. I know there are still a few questions coming in, but Devanshu tried to touch upon it very broadly and try to think of the buyer-seller context when you're putting your application together. One more thing I'd say, instead of you trying to push yourself so hard enough that you are trying to get into a business school, also think from their perspective, they're trying to get the best. They want to be proud of you in their profile board, in their career statistics. So anything that you're struggling with, always think, do you have something in your profile that's going to make the business school want in you? They're also wanting you. It's not only you wanting to get in there. So it's a two-way street. And whenever you bring the choices together with respect to what you want to achieve in your career, which Timotej also talked about, how you do research on the schools, you'll be able to find the best fit, and you'll be able to prove yourself the best fit as well. Thanks everyone for joining. If you guys still have questions, join us or apply for the profile evaluation with our experts, and they'll be happy to address any questions that you have.
Okay, thanks, Pradip. But just just in the interest of, not leaving anybody hanging, I'm, if it's okay with you, I'm going to spend 5 minutes.
No, I'm okay. If anybody wants to, you guys can hang around. I can hang around as well.
Yeah. And Timotej, likewise, I hope, like if you're busy, you have Saturday plans, it's okay. But it's just that I feel there are 3-4 questions that are remaining, and I just don't want to leave anybody high and dry. So the question from Chase Lynn about undergrad GPA being 3.5 and masters being 3.2. And the question about how do you tackle it? Number one, it's not that significant a drop to raise concerns and raise eyebrows. So my personal strategy would be to just leave it there, right? Because there are other aspects of your applications that you can highlight upon. Then talking about a 0.3 difference in your GPA. But if you still want to do it in the optional essays. And again, if there is a drop, if something went down, what went up during that same period? That's it. That's how you tackle an optional essay, short and sweet. Then the question from Dhruv and Timotej, please jump in. I hope I'm sort of doing a rapid fire here, so don't want to be the only one who's speaking. If there are questions coming in, you can pick them up. So the question from Dhruv Khandelwal about having worked only in software industry and how do you justify it? I think it's a very good question, but in the interest of time, it's really hard to give an answer that would suffice you. For this, I would actually recommend you get into a deep dive session with other teammates at MBA and beyond. Having said this, in my personal experience, I've seen multiple people who had experience in one industry and one industry only, and they managed to get an admission and have gone on to do very well for themselves. However, your application and your post-MBA goals would have to be, at least for the sake of application, would have to be crafted in a certain manner that it makes sense. Now, after 7 years of working in software, you cannot tell me that you want to go and start a band or you want to work in music industry. It's just it's just not believable. You may still do it, and you're free to do it, but not on the application bit. There's a whole art to it, that goes on, about how do you link it. But I think it's very short. This platform is really short to answer this question. But having said this, it's tackleable. It's not a big deal. I've seen plenty of profiles, and 7 years is a significant chunk of time. But B schools across the world have people across all work experience ranges from 7 to 12. So it absolutely doesn't matter. Don't think of it as a hindrance.
Yep. And maybe to jump in on Sonal's question around the career switch. So I think I want to kind of quote Devanshu here on MBA is a means, it's not the end goal. So you really need to think about your career goals and spend quality time on that. So it's again, MBA can help you achieve those, but you need to have some direction as to what you want to do later in the career. One thing to think about it from a technical sales starting point, maybe what not to choose are some, maybe quant heavy finance and stuff, right? That's going to be a lot more difficult to demonstrate that there's a natural progression to a career change. But as a technical, salesperson, you may have some good industry specific experiences that you can apply to your post-MBA job. So you can work in the same industry, but in a different function. That could be another way to transition into another skill set. So you have a lot of options, but you really need to think hard as to what you actually really want to do. I was in the same shoes. I really didn't enjoy finance, and I knew it, but I kind of knew the industry, and then the actual function kind of came organically as I was kind of starting from a quant position to begin with.
Okay, that's actually great. I have nothing to add to it. It's really good. Then there's a question from Sonali Shekhar, which she says she has 4 years of experience in technical sales, but does not enjoy it anymore and wants to pursue an MBA in order to switch my career. You're concerned about whether adcoms would take you as a confused candidate looking for a career switch. So few things. Career switches are more common than you think. It happens all the time. People wanting a career switch are not necessarily considered confused, so long as their essays hold together. Again, the question is, it's okay if you don't like your job. I'm sure 9 out of 10 people don't like their jobs, right? And if they want to do something else, they will at least explore something. So when you're trying to craft your essay, before that, do experiment a bit, do find out a bit more about what are the things that you would possibly like to do. And I would also like to add on to it, MBA is a 2-year program at that is a great place to actually experiment and do everything and experience everything under the sky and then make up your mind. And a lot of people, and so adcoms know that. So, but it should not be just a thought in the mind and then written on the paper. There should be some data points or something that suggests to the adcoms that you're at least serious about experimentation. They don't want you. They don't want that somebody comes with a particular experience, does not experiment anything in 2 years, and then goes back to the same field only because that's where they're the most employable. And at the end of it, the candidate's goals are not matched. They're not happy with the school, and then the school doesn't get a good reputation. So, in essence, it's a function of experimenting a bit on your own to figure out what are the possible areas where you would want to go, and B, bring those out very effectively in the applications. So we are all confused, but just don't remain confused. Show some sort of initiative, and I think it'll shine. It'll do the job. So,
I think is there any more left?
There's just last left with Kushagra.
Go for it, Devanshu. Yeah.
So I think, Kushagra, if you're still on the call and you're saying that you have, experience in the development sector, in the renewables energy sector, in multilateral development banks. My industry experience is limited and I come from an R&D background. And you want to get into a business development portfolio in the private sector, just to make it, just so that I'm correct, RE means real estate or RE means renewable energy?
Yeah, it's renewable energy, not real estate. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm just reading through stuff very fast. So, actually, having an R&D background and wanting to do business development in renewable energy is actually a great plus point. If you really think about technical sales in this sector, right? A lot of these players actually do prefer, having people having that sort of background versus, people just being pure salesmen. So what this transition is not a red flag at all, in my opinion. And then, but Timothej, I think, has a better context on the industry. He can add more
exactly. I think you're in a great industry, and not a lot of people, come with that background and want to stay in that background. So I think there's a very natural progression for you. Here, it's just about the nuance of how you explain that transition, and especially, I think, whether it makes sense to be the short-term goal. That's the part where I encourage you to think a little bit, because I think business development versus working in development banks, there could be some slight differences there. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to have a good and successful career, and the MBA is going to help with that. I think this really is about choosing the right school, which has a good strength and a good alumni network in that space. So yeah, I wouldn't say that there's any major red flags. So it's still a fairly nascent industry, so you have a lot of flexibility as to how you move, functions within renewable energy.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Timothej. Devanshu. Sorry to cut in like this, but I just wanted to make sure this lack of industry experience, not lack, but rather limited experience, that should not be a problem, right? In terms of employability after MBA, I mean, that is something I have to convince the adcoms, because I'm moving from MDBs to private sector. So from that standpoint, there should not be a problem, right?
Here, you want to demonstrate the industry, which is renewable energy, and show strength there. And that's how you're going to land your first job. Again, work with a more limited pool of your competition, which is folks that come from renewable energy. And that's where you can keep your focus. Less so worry about, going from development banks into the private sector, because the private sector does have to interact with development banks, with multinationals. There could be an intermediary job. So maybe think about that business development from a channel perspective. How can I use my experience in the DB segment and use that channel to land a partnership piece of the business development job?
Got it. Thanks.
All right, guys, we've really overshot. And I know Sai and Sonal, I personally am going to make time for you guys tomorrow. Sunday, if that suits you both, we'll lock in like 15 to 30 minutes of time with both of you, and then we can get on a call. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And thanks, Devanshu, Timothej, for a very insightful session. You guys are going to receive email from us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. It was nice interacting with everyone.
Bye, great questions, everyone.
Great questions.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.